Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Start Younger,
Woo.
the podcast with me, Douglas Carpenter, and Drew Boa and Blake Brinkman. I really appreciate these guys, and I'm glad they're here with me today. And I'm really excited to start this journey and these discussions about how to deepen the relationship between fathers and sons. It's so important. And whether you're a dad out there or you're a teen right now, we're just glad that you're here. We're glad that you're taking this risk, that you're on this journey, that you're exploring our whole concept of how to outgrow porn at any age. But part of exploring that is the underlying reasons why maybe your porn use started and how it developed. And that's usually based in some kind of emotional feeling deficit, lack of connection. There's a reason there. In husband material, we call this our origin story. Where's the origin of how this journey and this struggle started for me? And that it's really important that we begin to explore that. And oftentimes, our quest and our deep desire that we have with pornography is all about an underlying need for connection. We want to feel connected to someone, something. We want to be seen. We want to be known. We want to be understood. So, the topic that we want to explore today is, what did you need from your dad? What did you wish you would have heard from your dad? What did you need to hear? And let's explore this emotional foundation that every boy craves and longs for in connection with another man. And maybe you don't have a dad in your life. Maybe you don't have a strong male figure. And at some point, we'll talk about the needs that we have from a mom. And what we get from females is equally as important as we get from a man. But I think finding a male voice in your life to be able to speak into your life is very important for every young man. And so, our last episode, you heard all of our stories to some degree of depth, and all of those involved a deep desire for connection. Especially in mine, my father was not an active part of my life, even though he was present. And there were lots of things I needed to hear from him that I never got. And so we just want to explore that today. What do boys need to hear from father? So I'm really going to open this up now to Drew and Blake for them to throw out their thoughts and feelings and reactions, because I know they're passionate about this as well.
This is something I wrote about in my book, Outgrow Porn. All of us have this deep longing and need to know who we are. And that is one of the primary roles a father can play in the lives of his children, to tell you who you are. And it breaks my heart when I hear men say, "My dad never said I love you." Or, "I never got a hug until I was 18 years old. I was going off to college." I'm like, we grow up thinking, "Oh, that's just my life. That's just normal." That is a desert. That is emotional deprivation that we don't even know we're experiencing, because it's neglect. When we don't experience the things we need, we don't realize it usually. And that's why I think neglect is the carbon monoxide of childhood trauma.
Yes. I think of my own story, and my dad, as I mentioned on a prior podcast, was physically abused by his father and emotionally abused. And so he just distanced himself from us because he didn't want to hurt us and thought that was the way to go about it. But my dad, occasionally through my life, would buy me these gifts, and he would show up with them, like a new 10-speed bike or a moped, and I would be like, what is going on? Like, you don't even hardly speak to me. I don't even know you. I sat at the dinner table every night at 5:30 with you, and you barely speak. and you show up with these gifts for me. I was so confused. I was just so confused. And I would have traded any of those items for his words.
Mm-hmm.
If I could have just heard him express his love and nurturance toward me versus buying me a gift and being confused.
Or to put words with the gift.
Yes.
So the words that I find that I longed to hear the most from my dad were not just I love you, but I'm proud of you.
Yes.
Not because of what you do, but because of who you are.
Mm.
A lot of my family members have been very successful in their careers. And my dad would often give me praise when it seemed like I was succeeding at something in school or in sports or just in life. It seemed like his approval was conditional. And so what I needed him to hear is, even when you're not impressive, even when you make mistakes, even when you don't measure up to whatever standard, like, I love you there. I'm proud of you right now, exactly as you are. And that is the voice that we see in the Bible. When Jesus gets baptized, there's a voice from heaven where he says, "This is my beloved son, in him I am well pleased." And that is the banner that has defined me, and I think defines each of us. When we become part of God's family, those words are for us. And fathers get to represent that love of God with our words, with our faces, with our voices. And when you have that sense of identity, I don't need to go looking for it somewhere else. Because so often porn is meeting some kind of attachment need of the approval, the affirmation, the attention, the affection that I feel like I don't have or I'm not good enough for.
Drew, as you were talking, you made memories flood my head of the only time I ever really heard our dad verbally praise us was over our grades. And my sister is a brainiac and was always a straight A student. And he didn't give her much praise either. Like he was really detached from all of us. But when my sister brought home her grade card, that would be the topic of conversation at the dinner table, and how proud he was of her. And she was smarter than I was, or at least she applied herself more than I did at that age. I think I had a lot of emotional issues going on. But that so affected me that I wanted his praise of being smart too. That my sister grew up and was successful and got a master's degree. And part of my drive to get a doctorate degree was to beat her. I'm going to beat you. And I'm going to show him. I'm going to show him I'm just as smart as you. I'm going to show you that I deserve affirmation just like she did for being so smart. And I'm going to beat her and I'm going to prove it to you. And that was all in a quest to get his affirmation.
It's shame-based performance.
Very much so.
And for some of us on the inside, that sounds like if only. If only I had this thing, or if only I could be like that. If only. But the love of the Father says, even if.
Yes.
Not if only. It's even if you never do that, or you never look like that, or you never get that. Like, even if you struggle with porn, even if you never get free, even if, like, you're not the son that I think you should be, I love you and I'm proud of you.
That is so good. And I'm going to jump on here. This was the same thing I thought about immediately, was the internal desires, right? We say a lot of, when we go to porn, we're trying to meet legitimate desires in illegitimate ways. right? And the legitimate desires we're talking about here are blessing and affirmation. And I think there is value in affirming things, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but the blessing is of the utmost important, which is what you guys are talking about of even if, no matter what, no matter where I find you, my love and favor and face towards you will not change. I value you because you are my son and you are my daughter, etc. Uh, this is who you are, not because of what you did or what you accomplished. I simply bless you and love you fully. And then in affirmation, the grades thing, Doug, right? That is so common. And what I know to be true is many parents hear that and they're like, yeah, that's not how we talk about it. And I can't tell you how implicitly these ideas get planted in kids' heads of when we're around the dinner table and just gets talked about. And it's like, I was just celebrating great grades. And that can be true. And what kids start to learn very quickly is, well, I get this level of affirmation when I get a good grade, but if I don't, it's kind of silent. So I better keep achieving and reaching the highest pinnacle. And if I don't, some of these things start to evaporate or get desert like. Maybe there's not negative consequences, like I don't get yelled at, I don't get scolded or grounded, but I just don't get that same level of attunement and connection. And so I always tell parents of affirm the process more than results.
Yes.
Love that.
You studied so hard. You were in the gym. You were walking through that. You were practicing. Like, that's amazing. Like, you have such incredible character and determination about you. And honestly, I don't care that much that you got a 77 or that you missed this shot or that you played this note wrong. Like, I'm so proud of you. I don't have kids yet, but I have this dream of putting bad grades on the fridge, or bad grades. What are those even called? But, I'm like, look at you go. Like, you were in science class doing your thing.
Look
like,
at that one-legged A. Yeah.
I don't base your value on performance. And I want to let them drive their goals and desires. Like, what do you want out of class? What do you want out of your grades? Like, how can I help empower you in that? What do we want to work on together? And when we affirm results, it gets really janky in teens' heads very, very quickly, even without being explicitly spoken.
I know for myself, when my dad would go on and on about grades at the table, he also paid you $5 per A. So I would be sitting at the table, I would get $5 because I got one A, and my sister would get $25 because she got 5 A's.
Mm-hmm.
And that became that achievement driven, where I needed words of affirmation. I was into art and music and things that were less academically focused, and I longed for the verbal affirmation. I think of my own kids. My son and I are very close, but we're very different personality wise. And when he was little, he loved monster trucks, and I took him to so many redneck monster jams. It wasn't even funny. And I would just praise him for loving it and that he and dad were going to do this together. And I just got into whatever he was into, even though I was like, oh my word.
So that's another huge need.
Huge one.
Right? It's not just speaking words of blessing and affirmation that don't create comparison, but create connection.
Yes.
And it's also getting into your son's world.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Instead of expecting him to kind of come into my world, getting into his world.
And I often hear a lot of judgment around kids' worlds of, well, they're into this thing, this video game or this social media, these movies, these music, and like kids these days just don't get it. Like, who wants to have a conversation with that tone? Like, I don't want to talk to you about my interests if that's how you're coming towards me about that. But if we move towards them and say, hey, tell me more, what do you like about that music? what gets you going about this movie or this video game or this group? Like, get curious, and your kids long to tell you about it. A story I'll share about this of engagement is so valuable. Get into your kids' world. I love to play video games. I won't even tell you which one because some parents have very intense views about such games. But my dad started to weirdly later in my life get really curious about this video game I was playing. He was like, he started by just sitting on the couch watching it for a while, and then he kind of asked like, "Hey, can I play a couple rounds?" And this game was like my life. I wanted to be on it 24/7, and yet I was very interested in the idea of my dad being interested. And so I was like, yeah, play a couple rounds. And my dad was so bad at it. He was awful, horrible. And yet, because he was engaging in my world, I was over the moon. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I didn't care that he was terrible or didn't know what he was doing. I thought it was amazing that he wanted to be in my space.
That he wanted to be with you.
Yes.
Fully. I longed for that. I don't think either of my parents ever got curious or played a video game with me. And considering how many hours and hours I spent on that, it was like, it was a missed opportunity. And so we're talking about blessing and affirmation, as well as really quality time that's more about the child than the parent.
I'm reminded of a capstone thing, an Adrian Hickman quote, but this idea that we often think in terms of quality time, if I got to manufacture these beautiful moments. And he talks about this idea of the more we build just quantity time, that we are spending time together with no real agenda, but I'm focused and attuned on my kid, quality is going to happen just over time by the more and more moments and reps and curiosity you get in that. Quality is gonna happen. And so to life is busy and we have to prioritize the things that are meaningful to us. And so placing a high priority of we spend a lot of quantity time together.
Yeah, my dad worked 12-hour days for my whole life and lacked that quantity.
Well, and I even look back as an adult, and my kids are grown now, and I feel like I was a good dad, but I still have a lot of periods of regret where I missed quality time and I worked too many hours helping other people get through the junk in their lives versus paying enough attention to my own children. And so I think it's so important to take advantage of those quality times when you have them. I do remember when my son was young, when he was in kindergarten, it was really getting a hold of learning his numbers and all that. He constantly wanted to play Uno. And I tried to stop and just take advantage of those opportunities. I mean, as he was older, he got involved in stuff that I really didn't like, video games. Like, I was just not good at that. Like, I missed that opportunity, but
Sure.
So all of this is building trust,
yes.
creating safety and connection, which is the right environment to be able to have conversations about sexuality and porn.
Yeah. I think in that light, a need that comes to mind that we've kind of talked about in prior episodes, but just the need to be able to communicate openly about anything. We say it a lot of there's nothing too weird, nothing too abnormal, nothing too far gone, nothing that we can't talk about, that I don't have the space to hear you out on. And I may not have all the answers even, but I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you brought that up. Let's explore it together.
Well, and that was one thing with, like, when my son would come to me with a question, I never laughed. I never made fun of him for the question. I always answered his correct question straightforward in language that he could understand and just made it conversational. And therefore, from a very young age, he just kept coming to me with questions. And it was no big deal because I had established this conversational tone with him that we could talk about anything.
I think the conversational tone is so key there. 'Cause what I see with a lot of parents is the fear and the shame and the anxiety kicks in immediately of, oh my
Right.
gosh, they just asked me about, and I didn't make sure they never have sex. And so I answer very anxiously and very intensely, very quickly. And what kids learn implicitly through that is, mom or dad seemed really scared by my question, and therefore I probably shouldn't ask anything like that again. And so our tone of safety is so key.
So true. Well, I mean, I'll just be real honest here, and I don't. We may have to edit this out. I don't know. But my son, the first time he had an erection, at like 5, he called me in the room, and he's like, "What is wrong with this?" And I just had to sit down and have a conversation about boys and men and our bodies and the penis and what happens and what that means, and I just so normalized it.
That's right. That's what kids need.
Yeah.
And you also probably had what's called the power of first mention. So the first time we hear a word or a concept has a bigger influence on how we view that thing.
Yes.
If you can be the one who introduces the concept of an erection, that is going to
Yeah.
have a bigger impact than if a kid hears it from a friend.
Well, and I celebrated that with him. I'm like, Dad's does that too.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
That's not weird.
that's not weird at all.
And there's this myth that we need to have a single sex talk where we get through all of the different words and concepts. That is so not true.
No.
Doesn't work at all.
It's an onion. It's layer upon layer. The Bible says precept upon precept, right?
Yeah. I want to read a quote from Tina Shermer Sellers, who says, "Children and adolescents do not need one 100-minute awkward and painful sexual health conversation. They need 101-minute conversations.
Yes.
They need sexual and relational education delivered in many, many sound bites weekly across their entire childhood and teenage years." Just think about how your life might be different with that kind of support.
Oh, I think of that with my son so much. Like the first time he had an erection, and then another time, probably 2 years later, he came to me and he goes, Dad, what's a lesbian? Like he'd heard this term. And then when he was 11, he came to me and said, what's a condom? Because he had heard, we went to see the Broadway show, like Hairspray or something, and they had mentioned that word. And so then he was like, what is that? Like, so it was just these little questions and little 1-minute conversations.
And to remember this idea, exactly what you're saying, Drew, of if I don't talk about it, someone else will be willing to.
Absolutely.
The world is always talking about this stuff.
The world is unashamed and unafraid to talk about anything in the way they see it. And so we have the opportunity to engage. I think of the bravery of a teen I was working with who he basically described to me an ejaculation experience and was basically like, what is this? I don't understand. And it was such a beautiful moment to be like,
Yes.
hey, that's not abnormal. That's not weird. That makes sense. Here's some of the God's design biology behind that and why and how that happens. And I'm thankful you shared that and celebrating that, like you said, Doug, of like, what honesty, what courage, like good for you, pal. And that changes a trajectory so much.
I mean, my son, I'm sure he'll kill me when he hears these podcasts, but the first time he had a wet dream, he came to me and I was outside reading a book and he sat down and he goes, Dad, do boys have periods? And I go,
it's a great question.
We don't. But I'm curious what happened for you that made you come and ask Dad that question?
Mm-hmm.
And that opened the door for him to tell me that he'd actually had a wet dream. And then we got to discuss that.
Amazing. That's so good.
But it was all those 1-minute conversations, the 51-minute conversations we had before he had a wet dream that allowed him to come and ask me that.
And with my kids, the entire concept of a parent giving the sex talk has been reversed because I have this card deck by Dear Young Married Couple called Having the Talks. Multiple talks, not just one.
Yes.
And it's got 107 conversation starters where I will ask my kids, what is a penis? What is a vagina? And then they get to tell me how much they already know.
Yeah.
So it's no longer just like a lecture. And in fact, we have this card game at the dinner table, and sometimes the kids will say, hey, can we do the talks? Like they are initiating.
Come on.
They
Let's
want to
go.
do it because it's fun.
It is.
Because
There's no shame.
joy, yeah.
It's not scary. It's not anxiety driving. This is open and free conversation we get to have with mom and dad.
And they get to share what they've already picked up, and we start with that.
Yes.
And they won't be scolded or punished or made to feel other than or weird for that. It's like, I'm so curious. Tell me what have you heard? And let's start talking about this together.
Yeah, just like I asked my son, well, what happened? What made you ask me that? Like, let's talk about that.
If I may, another thing that comes to mind in this context of something we desperately need from dads is the safe space emotionally.
Oh,
I think even more so for boys and men and dads. It still happens with girls and moms, but it's with men, there's this cultural belief that emotions shouldn't be felt or experienced. And number one, the Bible debunks it so fully of Jesus' experience of emotions and the full range of emotions just on display there. But regardless, there's a cultural tone to that you can't do that. And I remember having huge emotions, big, really confusing, and didn't know how to regulate emotions as a kid. I got disappointed and cried easily and would get very upset. And I'll never forget my dad's disgruntled, disappointed face when he would say, "Why are you so sensitive?"
oh.
And I immediately felt that sense of there's something wrong with me. What I can't make sense of this any other way. And it took so many years to understand the truth that my emotions are meaningful and valid and acceptable. And doesn't mean I need to let them drive the entire ship, but it's a great GPS system to what's going on within me. And when we can have a safety
Yes,
about that
yes,
of,
yes.
hey, tell me more about these emotions. Like, let's follow that thread and see where it leads us. Like, oh, that can change everything in our households.
If I can just jump in and do a quick teaching moment, like I really tried to be conscious when my kids were small. If they started crying or if they were hurt or something, I would pick them up. I would sit in the recliner. I would put them in my lap and I would say, Dad's just going to hold you until you're done crying. And when you're done crying, we'll talk about this. And I just let them have their moment, no matter how big it was. I remember one time my daughter was crying about something and we both love Cheetos. And so she came to me, she was crying, she was upset. And I know could cause an eating disorder. I know all these, yeah. But I said, go get the Cheetos. And we sat in the chair and she cried and we just ate Cheetos until she was ready to talk.
That's great.
And it's just taking that time to be present with them, give them permission to experience their emotion, and then you can talk about it. You don't have to shame them. You don't have to move them away from those emotions. You just be present with them.
In an emotionally safe relationship, you have total permission to feel whatever you're feeling.
Yes.
There are no negative emotions.
No, should not feel that.
Right.
Yeah. And Blake actually gave me an idea about how to develop emotional connection and literacy with my kids. It's based on the feeling wheel. So a lot of you probably would be familiar with the feeling wheel. If you're not, go do a little Google image search. And at our husband material healing weekends, we have a feeling wheel pillow that we pass around the room so that people can check in with how they're feeling. And maybe part of me is feeling anxious, part of me is feeling excited, part of me is feeling ashamed. Well, Blake had the idea of taking each feeling, cutting them into little strips, putting them in a jar or a bowl, and then turning it into a game. So another game we play at the dinner table is the feelings game, where each person takes a turn picking up one of those strips of paper that has a feeling word on it and saying, about a time when I felt this feeling. When have I felt heartbroken? One of my sons really likes sharing about that. Our neighbor's dog died, and he's like, I felt heartbroken.
Oh,
Good for him.
This is great for kids. This is great for teens. This is great for adults.
yes.
Mom and dad have to go first.
Yes.
Yep.
All that's so good for cognitive development and being able to interact and read other people and have empathy and compassion.
And it's extremely important for sexual recovery, because if we don't name our emotions and process them, they will become sexualized. And we will try to escape from them or avoid them through a distraction like porn.
That's right. And we talk about this a lot on here, this idea that it's never too late to start, right? And so I've literally practiced this with parents and families with their teenagers. And the first couple times there can be a resistance. If we've never done this before, this is awkward and weird. I don't want to play this silly, stupid game. And I can't tell you how many times it takes, maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, but normally the teens start running around, grabbing the cup and saying, who's ready to play the feeling game? Like, let's do 2 tonight. What do y'all think? Let's do 2. And they love emotional safety. They just don't know it yet. And so we as parents and leaders need to be the ones who lead and open up that safety for them.
This is so good. So we've talked about blessing and affirmation. We've talked about entering your world. And we've talked about the need for open communication about anything, as well as emotional safety. Seems like a pretty good recipe for a healthy relationship.
Gosh, the things that would change.
Yeah.
So Blake, beyond creating the feelings game, which is a great idea, what would you recommend to parents and leaders on what they can do to help their kids?
We 100% will do a podcast about this question, but for starters, I do think the feeling game is probably the most accessible and easiest to start. And so just start there. Cut up a feeling wheel, put them all in a cup, pull one out and say, when's the time I felt this? Especially recently. I try to say within today or the past week. But outside of that, just starting to get attuned to, what are my feelings or resistances to these things? How do I feel about emotions? How do I feel about openly communicating about anything? Because we say a lot, you can only take someone as far as you've gone yourself, right? And so our journey and story and engagement as parents is going to empower and clear the way for our kids to engage in a similar way. And so that doesn't have to happen tomorrow, but just start to grow those awareness muscles of what's going on within me when I think about these things.
And in addition to the feelings game, you can get the Having the Talks card game, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Doug, what about for a young person who's hearing about what they need and maybe is realizing that they're not getting those things?
Yeah, I would encourage you to recognize that that's a very normal part of you, to not ostracize that part of you, but to walk toward it, recognize this is what I need, and begin to think about, where in my life could I get this need met? Who could I reach out to? Who can I connect to? But don't be afraid of that. Don't wall that part of you off. Don't sequester it away. We need to walk into our feelings with compassion and curiosity and recognize that they're normal. No emotion is good or bad. It's what we do with our emotion that we can be judged about. No court of law is going to judge you for having a feeling. You're not bad because you have a feeling. And just allow yourself to be curious about that. And where can I get this emotional connection for this need met in a healthy way?
And if you have been underfathered, good news. You can be refathered.
Amen.
By God in community
Yeah.
with safe men, with brothers. And we'll get into this in future episodes. you can also reparent yourself. And we are actually going to host a father-son healing weekend where fathers or father figures and teen boys or young men can come and experience that refathering, reparenting process, redemption, healing, connection, being able to say things that you've never said, being able to work through things that you've never processed. It's going to be a powerful time. It's going to be in Utah. And if you are interested in attending this with your father or a father figure in your life, or with your son or somebody that you're mentoring, then you can go down to the show notes in the description where you can apply to be part of it. And I'm really looking forward to that, because we are here to outgrow porn at any age.
At any age.
At any age.